Excellencies, distinguished participants, on behalf of the IOM Director General, Antonio Vitorino, I wish to thank you for inviting IOM to participate in this important event. While the international mobility restrictions we are all experiencing have limited my participation to a virtual presence, I am very happy to be able to provide input to this important discussion. I do hope that I will be able to participate in person in the next forum. Over the past year, we have all undergone an experience of fundamental social and economic disruption. How will employment recover, and what will international labor migration look like in the post-COVID world? These are important questions, and as vaccines roll out and we begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel, we have been hearing these questions more and more. The past year has demonstrated to us how important well-functioning systems of international mobility are for our societies, economies, and supply chains. When international mobility suddenly seized up last March, many governments rushed to put in a patchwork of exemptions to allow essential workers to cross borders. Here in the Russian Federation and elsewhere, we have seen labor shortages in sectors that are heavily reliant on foreign workers, such as agriculture and construction. At the same time, the past year has transformed the way we work, with remote work becoming the norm for many, and workers in certain occupations no longer being as tied to a physical location for their employment. As such, international labor migration may be in a seemingly paradoxical situation going forward. While remote work is creating an unprecedented trend in return, there are certain sectors where the need for labor migration is increasing exponentially. The popularity of remote work has created opportunities for return migration of skilled professionals to a degree we have never seen before. This is not an entirely new trend. Even before the pandemic, we were seeing increasing numbers of young migrant workers returning home and working remotely using online outsourcing websites to find work throughout the world while working from home. Over the past year, though, this has accelerated. As one example, hundreds of thousands of skilled migrant workers have returned from Western Europe to Eastern Europe, many of whom plan to remain for the long term. Even a world where we commute to work twice or 3 times a week changes the equation for many people on where they decide to live. Looking at international migration trends, we have seen hundreds of thousands of people moving out of extensive cities to rural communities or secondary cities where they can afford a bigger home and a nicer lifestyle. In many cases, these COVID-related trends have reversed decades of outmigration and are creating new dynamics and opportunities for economic growth in countries and regions that have long been suffering from aging and declining populations. For this trend to stick, countries and communities need to invest in public institutions and infrastructure to accommodate a more remote workforce. More concretely, this means investments in shared workspaces, technologies, and broadband needed to work remotely, as well as transportation links to hub cities where workers will still need to commute occasionally. While we can see trends towards remote work continuing for the coming years, this does not mark an end for international labor migration. Far from it. While many jobs may be able to be done remotely, there are many more that cannot. Most work in healthcare, agriculture, manufacturing, and many other sectors cannot be done remotely. Additionally, demographic shifts in many of the world's wealthiest countries have created an imbalance in the supply and demand of labor that can only be met through a variety of policy interventions that include migration. 20 years ago, we would point to Japan as a country facing demographic challenges with a rapidly aging population. Today, this list has grown to include many countries, including the Russian Federation. The list also includes most countries in the European Union, as well as Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe. Facing these demographic shifts, demand for safe, orderly, and efficient labor migration channels will only increase in the coming years. As IOM, we have been seeing a growing demand from governments and the private sector to learn about good practices in policy and programming that can efficiently match supply and demand for workers internationally. To respond to this demand, IOM is partnering with the ILO, UNESCO, and workers and employers organizations to establish a global skills partnership on migration. This partnership seeks to address skills, mobility issues, and support governments to develop programs that are safe, orderly, and efficient for all stakeholders. This also means jointly devising solutions to make it easier for employers to identify and recruit the workers that they need while reducing the risk of debt or exploitation in recruitment or employment. IOM is determined to work with our partners to improve systems for international labor migration. We implement various initiatives to improve on the current status quo. Allow me to give you a brief overview. In addition to the Global Skills Partnership, IOM launched the Global Project on Sustainable Integration of Skills into Migration Governance, a global project aiming to develop tools and guidance to support governments in establishing skills mobility partnerships. Also, IOM is a program called CREST that works with the private sector to ensure that migrant workers are treated ethically and fairly within the supply chains. The International Recruitment Integrity System, IRIS, works with international recruitment agencies to promote fair and ethical recruitment channels that protect the rights of workers while meeting employer needs. Additionally, in May, IOM will launch the Global Policy Network on Recruitment, bringing together agencies responsible for the regulation of international labor recruitment to exchange good practices and work towards common objectives. We welcome the participation of the Russian Federation in any and all of these initiatives. For the Russian Federation, IOM has just embarked on an ambitious research project to better understand the dynamics of labor migration between the Russian Federation and Central Asia. The research will identify opportunities for establishing more efficient recruitment systems that better meet the needs of workers and employers. This is a first step in our longer-term plans to work with relevant government and private sector stakeholders in the Russian Federation and Central Asia to build safe, orderly, and efficient labor recruitment systems in the region. The COVID pandemic has disrupted mobility systems and taken over much of our lives for the past year. At times, it seems the only thing we speak about with friends are lockdown regulations, case numbers, and vaccination rates. But a post-pandemic world is coming soon, albeit one where human mobility and the systems that govern human mobility will continue to be shaped by COVID for years to come. New systems and infrastructure will have to be created and adapted to meet the new realities of labor migration in this new era. As IOM, we look forward to working with our partners to respond to these new challenges and opportunities to establish labor migration policies and systems that are safe, orderly, and efficient and which benefit all stakeholders. I take this opportunity to again thank you for inviting me to speak today and wish you all a fruitful forum.